What is up, Pats, pals, and Foxborough friends, the worldwide over of Patriots Nation? Your old pal Nick Fitzy Stevens here alongside Andy Jumbo Hat for a very special episode of the Six Rings and Football Things podcast as we head into Labor Day weekend 2022. You guys have worked hard. You stiffs, you humps, you backbreakers out there. You're looking forward to your holiday weekend, and then they're going to hit the ground running next week because it's football o'clock. So what we thought we would do today is come together, clean up the notebook, pull open the old junk drawer, catch up on all those news, notes, and nuggets from all over the wide world of Pats. Little special Labor Day weekend Pats-pourri edition of Six Rings podcast. And then next week, oh man, Andy, do we have some? All right, we got some things. We got a lot of stuff going on next week. We're talking a season preview, AFC and NFC previews, playoff predictions sure to go wrong, getting you ready, pumped and jacked like a shirtless Pete Carroll for week one down in Miami Gardens. It's all on the table next week. But first, everything else and the best of the rest. Good afternoon, Mr. Hart. What's going on?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
No, I'm glad you actually clarified that we do have actual things planned for next week, because sometimes when people say, and boy, do we got lots for next week. That sounds like you're telling your boss, yeah, I got stuff I'm doing. Just leave me alone and don't look the rest of the day.
Listen, boss, I am going to be so busy. I'm not even going to be able to tell you what I'm doing, but trust me, I'm going to be doing work. I'm going to be satisfying my corporate quota, and I've got a very, very busy agenda. Don't you worry about it.
Okay, before we get into the roster maneuverings, some salary cap manipulations, maybe a salacious Tom Brady story, we're going to do a quick sidebar on something that you just sent out in the Merloni, Fourier, and Mego.
Merloni, Fourier, and Mego. Yes, we are recording this podcast as I walk around my little Cape Escape. This is my WEEI Cape Cod studios. We are getting ready for you and I filling in for Fourier and Mego this week on the Labor Day edition of the show. Yes.
And you texted something absolutely asinine that chicken thighs are better than steak. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
No. First of all, allow me to provide, because once again, as I often have to do, you are angry take Jake. The first thing you always want to do is make sure that you find a way to slight or slander your old pal Fitzy whenever it's available or possible without even providing context, which I have told you time and again is key to everything. People say content is king. I disagree. I say it is context. The context would be in light of Mac Jones last night at the Patriots premiere event saying that he believed that he is not a fan of seafood, even though he now lives in New England where seafood is abundant and available around every corner, that he's not a fan, still doesn't eat it, probably not going to eat it. So today we're going to discuss, because that's how radio do, our most controversial food take. So I offered up on the group text that I believe chicken thighs are better than steak. That's my feeling. No, it's not. It's how I feel.
They're not even good. And you know who learned that?
Not even good.
No, they're not good. And Wingstop learned that when they tried to do that stupid thigh stop.
They did that because there was a chicken wing shortage, you numbskull.
You know why there's a chicken wing shortage and not a chicken thigh shortage?
Well, why is that?
Because wings are good and thighs suck. That's why. Everybody's
you suck.
And better than steak? What kind of steak are you eating? Leather steak?
I love steak. Don't get me wrong.
But you love chicken thighs more?
I happen to just be a big fan of chicken thighs. Yes, as a matter of fact, my favorite chef.
Fat on them.
You've never even had one made the right way for you.
I have. They're not terrible when done the right way, but to say they're better than steak is idiotic. The ceiling on chicken thighs and the ceiling on steak, you can't even, not even close.
Andy,
skyscraper to basement.
Andy, was it supposed to be your most controversial food take? Did I not
believe it? So you made it up.
I do.
This is what you do. You're a hot take guy.
Did I not foster debate? Did I not engender dialogue?
I thought, see, I don't do that. I'm not a hot take guy. When I say something, I actually believe it. I didn't know you were a hot take guy. Okay, good to know now. Fitzy, full of crap, as I always expected. Now, let's get into the Patriots roster transactions, because we went through the cuts that got the team down to the 53-man roster, and we speculated that most of those guys would be back in some form or fashion. And as always on the Six Rings podcast, we nailed it. So on August 31st, I want to go through the first wave of formulation of the Patriots practice squad. Let me read all the names, and then we'll discuss anybody you're excited about, because I know there's at least one that you and I have a bet regarding. So, old friend, veteran, feels like he's been around freaking forever. James Ferentz made the practice squad. Kevin Harris, the 6th-round rookie running back, defensive back Hawkins. Wide receiver Lil Jordan Humphrey, who
my guy, watch out. He could take over with Taekwon now officially on injured reserve. He could see some Lil Jordan action.
He could be a roster promotion at any time. Harvey Longy, who's a Longy time favorite of Bill Belichick.
No. If that came out of my mouth, you'd be like, oh, good. Andy Hurtson. No. That was awful. And by the way, you forgot to also remind the audience, because our listenership, our viewership, the Foxborough faithful and the fans of Six Rings would like to know that you are allowed 1, 2, 3, just like the same number that it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, 3 promotions from the practice squad to the majors, to the bigs, to the all 53, if you will. So, you can, like people like so-and-so gets called up, so-and-so gets sent down. Like you can do it 3 times, and then you either have to be released or kept, correct?
Well, yeah, those are the automatic, and you revert to the practice squad the day after the game. Anybody can be signed from your practice squad. So, like, they have an open roster spot right now. They could do one of those automatic promotions, or they could just simply sign Lil Jordan Humphrey to the roster, give him a real contract, boom, and you're up. So, yeah, there's a couple ways you can utilize these 2 guys.
Now, we are recording this once again across the @FitzyGFY socials. Our producer, Chris Scheim, is otherwise detained. My favorite, Classy Claire, from a Claire perspective, one of the finest Patriots podcasts, not named Six Rings and Football Things, commenting right now via Facebook Live saying, Andy, that was a little awful, but I love you. I'll agree with one part of that. Go on, friend.
So where was I? Through Harvey Longy time favorite of Bill Belichick. Linebacker Cameron McGrone, cornerback Terrence Mitchell.
McGrone is what all Irish people do at your jokes. That was also terrible.
Why do they have to be Irish?
Okay, they could be Scottish. Shut up and keep going.
Offensive lineman, also formerly defensive lineman, Bill Murray. Wide receiver, Trey Nixon. Defensive lineman, Jeremiah Farms Jr. Defensive lineman, LeBrian Ray. Offensive lineman, Cody Russi. Tight end, Matt Sokol. Running back, J.J. Taylor. And tight end, Jalen Weidermeyer were all signed to the practice squad August 31st. A day later, an outsider joined the fun. Finally, somebody they hadn't seen all summer. That is wide receiver, Lynn Bowden Jr., who was a former 3rd-round pick, spent some time with the Dolphins, the Raiders, and they also, as you mentioned, put Tyquan Thornton on IR, and then reached an injury settlement with Henry Anderson, something that if you listen to the Six Rings podcast, was expected. We saw that coming. So those are the practice squatters.
They give them a little money to say, we're not just going to cut you outright. We appreciate you trying to make you getting hurt last year, tearing your pec, actually being on IR this season.
I tore my pec.
My arm, it's broken. So now he is released. Now he could sign again with the Patriots in 8 weeks, like Malcolm Butler could, correct? But he is free to pursue a contract with another team.
Well, it depends on the injury settlement, length of the injury, and then it's +3 after that date, +3 weeks, I believe. So it's they basically have a formula that they use. So if he pulled a hamstring and was expected to be available in, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Okay, you pay him for the 3 weeks. He hits the open market. Another team can sign him. There's a little extra waiting period before the Patriots can bring him back. But yes, he could join another team after the injury settlement, or he could sign with the Patriots. So same as Butler, yes. Okay. Let's get into your guy, Cam McGrone, who you told me this offseason was going to be some sort of a mix between Micah Parsons, Zach Thomas, Mike Singletary.
Never said that.
And now he's on the practice squad. And I need to let everybody know that as of yesterday, you and I made a Miller Lite bet.
Correct.
Which, by the way, if anybody wants to sponsor the podcast, we could change it to another beer of choice that we would mention early and often.
Once again, any and all are available. If any of our friends at InBev, and who owns Anheuser-Busch, Miller Coors, Narragansett, anyone, by all means.
Vitamin C.
We are here, the local crafties. Sure, by all
Yes.
means. We have so many different segments
Blueberry
we could
pancake.
do. We could do the lighter side of football. Let's crack into it. What's on tap? What's on draft? There's a draft recap. All those things are available and open. And I would like to also comment to Pat McSweeney, who writes, Fitzy looks like he just got off a Peloton ride. A, I don't have a Peloton. B, I did just come from going for a jog. And C, I thought it would be fun if I attacked the podcast looking like an older, sadder version of Josh Brolin from the Goonies. So thank you, Pat.
The guy who got cut from the Globetrotters. So Cam McGrone, we have bet that you believe
yes,
he will start at least 2 games for the New England Patriots this year. And we have a
it's at 1.5. I said I wanted to say 1. We said multiple games. So if he starts 1, the bet is off. If he starts 0, you win. If he starts 2, I win.
No. If he starts 1, I win. If he starts 0, I win.
No, I want 1. I'm not betting multiple. No,
you said I can get you the tape from yesterday where you said he will start multiple.
We said it off the air, you joker.
We didn't do that on the air.
No, we didn't. There's no.
Oh,
proof.
Well, we're doing it on the air now, and you bet. Be a man of your damn word. You said multiple.
1.
You said multiple.
Uno, my favorite card game.
Wow, I can't believe you're one of those guys. A renegger.
How many different corners do you try to paint me into in every available podcast?
You were a man of your word. Multiple means multiple.
I said he will start a game this year.
You said multiple. This is awkward. We're fighting in front of the kids.
And we promised that we wouldn't do that. We with our divergent personalities. Wow. All right. Why don't we just make it if he starts no games, you win. If he starts 1 game, bets off. 2 games, I win. Let's leave it at that.
No, I don't like. Well, fine, I guess. But wow. I used to respect you.
No, you didn't. You didn't. You just said that for. You just said that for convenience.
Okay, so in all seriousness, though, besides McGrone, who do you think is most likely of that group to contribute significantly this year? Because Bill Belichick had some comments last week where he's like, kind of poo-pooed the impact, quote unquote, of practice squad players and their significance.
Yeah,
I think there's a couple guys on there. I mean, I would say there's at least 3 that I could.
I have 3 in mind as well.
Contributing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give my 3. We'll see if they match your 3.
Okay.
So James Ferentz, they're going to have injuries. He's going to get called up. He's going to start games. Lil Jordan Humphrey, we already talked about it. I think he's an obvious choice to fill a void sooner rather than later. And Terrence Mitchell. I think all 3 of those veterans are at positions where you're undermanned. You don't have depth. Your depth is very young if you do have any depth. So I think all 3 of those guys might as well be on the 56-man roster.
Correct. Okay, those are very fair. I'm going to go with, and these are 3 honest ones, not because I want to just try to be different for the sake of debate. Mine will be, we agree on Lil Jordan Humphrey, but I've been in on him for quite some time now, especially since he made that great special teams play in the win against the Panthers 2s and 3s. Then instead of James Ferentz, I'm going to go with Cody Russi. In case there were an injury, in case there were further injury to David Andrews, who didn't exactly have a stellar camp, or should I say a camp that was on brand for Bear, because he's a Patriot great, finished at either 101 or 103 on the top 100 of the NFL. He and Damian Harris both barely missing out on being included on that peer-voted list. If he gets dinged up, I could see Russi getting the call over Ferentz and starting at center for the Patriots. And then I'm going to go with Lynn Bowden Jr. Because the new guy. And it's not because I think that they just dragged him in for I don't think they just dragged him in to sort of like pump him for information or put a spotlight on. They're like, what do you know? Tell me about Miami. Well, give me all the intel you have. I think rather the idea that Belichick was able to get his hands on, not someone that just Mike Mayock drafted, but again, another one of these Ty Montgomery types. Not to say that that's a type before people start clapping at me about that like they did on Twitter earlier, but somebody who's a wide receiver running back hybrid. If the Montgomery experiment is a 1-year piece to hold over until they figure out who the third down back or pass back of the future is, why not flirt with Lynn Bowden? And if he shows a little pop and if he's actually got some wiggle to him, maybe he can actually come up to the bigs since he's already played in the NFL and add a little something to an offense that I think both of us agree right now doesn't exactly like woof, wow, and flash on the old defensive preparations, eh?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of spots that are wide open. And to respond to our friend Claire, she said, "I'm so sorry, Andy. I do adore you, I promise. But Ferentz, yuck. Agree with Fitzy. Russie, please."
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me, because I've thought that James Ferentz wrote his name to about the last 6 years of his career in New England. I don't make the decisions. Bill Belichick makes the decisions. And I'll tell you, Bill Belichick likes and trusts James Ferentz. And there's a good chance if any of those 3 interior jobs need to be filled on any given week,
Okay.
that Ferentz is going to get a call up. And Russie's good. But if they liked Russie, you know where he'd be?
Where?
On the roster, just like Chase and Hines.
But Russie is more center, I believe, than guard, whereas Chase and Hines.
That was James Ferentz. James Ferentz has played all 3.
Okay. Yeah, he has played all 3 spots. I understand. And he's played them all very meh, if you will, at this point in his career. Whereas, like, Chase and Hines showed a little power in the preseason. Maybe, you know, he could sub right in if when you gets hurt or you're having some issues with Cole Strange. Russie, I think, like, I could see him as, like, center of the – I don't want to say center of the future because I want David Andrews to stick around as long as possible, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the call over Ferentz. Why they're holding on to Ferentz at this point, that's, you know, Ferentz is the offensive line equivalent of Terrence Mitchell, like very meh store brand defensive or offensive, like insert veteran here type of move.
Well, I would say he's even a step below because Terrence Mitchell's at least started games for multiple teams in the National Football League. James Ferentz is liked by one team and really only one man, Bill Belichick.
Friend of Ferentz. Like it's the fobs. Exactly. It's a fob. What is the name, by the way? Can we at least just agree that having a guy like Terrence Mitchell on the practice squad to call up in case we're in a pinch and we need some cornerback help is way better than what the hell was the name of the guy that the Patriots started in Buffalo? What was the name of the guy they started in Buffalo?
At the end of the
year. In the playoff game, and then he went to the XFL. And everyone was like, holy shit, how bad have things gotten at the Patriots?
I'm drawing the total blank.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Good. I'm glad both of us forgot his name because I never want to remember him playing for them or anything else about that game.
And Terrence Mitchell, he'd be a guy that I would worry could go to another team at some point just because he's a veteran journeyman corner and some injury. As Daniel Jeremiah said, everybody's looking for cornerback depth. But that's the practice squad. We'll see if it plays a role. Moving on to something that may be even less interesting than the practice squad, that would be salary cap manipulation. And the Patriots needed to do a little accounting work to get under the salary cap for next week. And people, just in case they don't understand, that is, I believe Tuesday is when they will need to be under the cap. It's why famously years ago,
compliant
Lawyer Malloy was cut because they had to be compliant with the cap, and he was going to go on the books that Tuesday. And that's why Lawyer Malloy was gone on a Monday and in Buffalo a day later. So they had to do a little gymnastics, and the guy they chose to do the gymnastics, not interesting to me. We knew it was going to happen. It was just a question of who and how. The name
because it's the practice squad. That's the one thing everyone looks at it now and goes, wait a second. I heard that they're like 2 or 3 million under the salary cap. What's going on? Once you account for all the practice squad players, I forgot this as well. And it's a good reminder that the people that aren't even on the 53 count in terms of the payroll as well. They could all make up to like $300,000 this year. So those salaries added on to the Patriots' current roster or active 53 equals projected negative $1.7 million for next Tuesday.
Right. I mean, they don't all count. They only count week by week. So you cut a practice squad guy. It's not like you have the dead money from what he would have made over the course of the season. They're weekly salaries. But you have to deal with the injury settlements for Butler and Anderson. You have to deal with Thornton on IR. Like all of those guys count towards the books, and they need to be compliant by Tuesday. So to get there, according to Field Yates, just this morning, within the last couple hours, Patriots have converted $7.965 million of tight end Jonnu Smith's base salary into a bonus, creating $5.31 million in 2022 cap space.
Jonnu?
They kicked the can down the road for Jonnu Smith. So I don't love it because generally when this is done, you're doing it with a player you know is going to be a part of your team down the road. You kick the can down the road, add to his salary cap down the road, even though you're going to be happy with the results. You're getting productivity on the field. I think this is a guy that some people wonder if he has a redo year this year like he was last year, he may be fighting for a roster spot. He may be out of a job. So you're increasing potentially the dead cap hit for a Jonnu Smith down the road. Now, maybe they're happy with him. Maybe they think he's going to be breakout player. He's going to reach the levels they were hopeful of a year ago. But I think it's interesting that Jonnu Smith was the guy that did the business with him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought it was either going to be Judon or Hunter Henry getting their deals reworked, because we could easily see them being a part of next year, if not even the immediate, if not even longer term future, because of their contributions last year and how much they're liked by their teammates. I think they'll both be on this team at least next year, if not for 2 more seasons. That would put Judon at all 4 years of the 4-year, $54 million deal he signed last season. This is the reality of the salary cap. Like, when you do things like this, people are like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, a salary cap is salary crap. You kick the can down the road. The Patriots either believe that they have enough money that they can take this chance and they can eat that hit next year, or that he's actually going to contribute. Like you said, Andy, dude, the guy's only like 26 years old. He still should have so many years of elite athletic ability. Now, I'm not saying like elite football ability just yet, because we haven't seen him really take the talents that he had in Tennessee and convert them into production and results in Fox's Burrow, as Antonio Brown once so wisely called it. So it's a risky move. I thought they would have gone one of many other ways, but there you go. So now maybe finally you'll get to see your ultimate dream, Jonnu Smith season.
Yes, and we should note that this is probably not the last of the maneuverings. I think when all the numbers are run, this is going to leave them with 3-point-something million in space, which is still shy of the $9 to $10 million they like to have as working money over the course of the season. So there could be more to come. Maybe it's Judon, maybe it's Henry, maybe who knows what else it could be. Right. I know some people are still holding out hope or intrigue that maybe a trade could still be on the horizon. I know some, I don't know if people are still pro or con on Nelson Aguilar, pro or con on Isaiah Wynn, a couple guys where you could move a little money potentially. But I think there's probably a little bit more maneuverings coming at some point.
Jeff Stenberg, currently watching live on YouTube. Trade Aguilar. He's just fast Nikhil, and you'll save $15 million.
You don't save $15 million.
You don't save $15 million.
I think
you could save
9.
No, well, that's if you get another team to eat the entire salary.
Well, yeah. And I don't think
you may have to pay for. No, you'd have to pay for.
And I wouldn't pay. I've reached the point with their depth of receivers. And ESPN, Dan Graziano had him as like the potential surprise Patriot of the year, and he's built such a rapport with Mac and all this, very Fitzy, Kim McGrone, March-like propaganda.
There we go. All right. Go ahead and satisfy that little black spot on your heart by saying something bad about me again. You're the one who'll have to pay for it in the next life. It's okay. But
if I have to pay, say, $5 million of Aguilar, I'll keep Aguilar.
Yeah, like I'm not paying another team to try to find a way to unlock Nelson Aguilar or make them better when you desperately need him to work out. And if he gives you what he gave you last year, well, you overpaid on day one in the first place. You got value out of Bourne. Hopefully they'll actually use him and allow him to do Kendrick Bourne things this year. But that's your mistake, and sometimes you got to eat that L. Just like I did when I admitted that I had a bad call on Cam McGrone and he hasn't evolved into the Deion Jones or Keanu Neal that I thought he would be for this defense. We'll see if that ultimately happens. Not yet. I get it. I'm holding on to Aguilar, but I am in on, and I don't think we've talked enough on this podcast, as I try to, ready for this? Go a little more Pats positive. I want to give listeners I want to give some listeners, shut up. I want to give some listeners that are, enjoying their Labor Day weekend, mowing the lawn, sitting at the beach, watching the kids, closing up the vacation house, whatever you're doing, whenever you happen to catch this episode. I want to give them some reasons for hope. And I got to tell you, I think with the way Jacoby Myers has been talking about Mac Jones, the fact that he continues to have the market share of targets from Mac, I think he's actually going to surpass the number of receptions he had last year. I think Myers is on pace for, I'm going to go 90-plus catches this season. I think Jacoby Myers is really going to have an excellent season with multiple touchdowns. That's the first of several predictions way before. I know I'm not putting the cat before the horse, before we get into our ultimate Pats preview episode for the 2022 season. Jacoby Myers, 90-plus catches, multiple touchdowns this year.
I don't love it, but we can talk about it next week when we get into more predictions.
Just chumming the waters a little bit.
Most of the fantasy world does not agree with you, because if he's going to catch 90-plus passes, then he should be a fantasy PPR value receiver. And the reality is everyone is staying the hell away from Patriots in general and Patriots receivers in general.
You and I just had a fantasy draft with the Gresham Keefe show this week. I've got 3 this weekend as well. I'm not sure if you and your son have multiple coming up. I'm not seeing Patriots going before the 7th round at earliest.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet, for not just because of the talent of the players, but the whole offensive poop show we've seen going on this summer. Okay, so we went weeds with our first 2 topics of this Labor Day edition Pats-pourri. We're going to go the opposite end. We're going to go salacious, sexy. We are going to go supermarket tabloid.
Oh, no.
Just the meat on the bone that is Tom Brady and his wife Giselle, because the reports are from Page 6, which is a very, very highly reliable source.
Very reputable. It's almost like if I read it on Twitter, it has to be true. If you see it in Page 6, take it as the gospel.
So Page 6 has reported that Brady and Giselle, Thomas Brady and Giselle Bunchkin, as our friend
Lou Merlone likes to call her. She's part Brazilian, part donut.
Had a huge blow up after the 10-day hiatus upon his return to Tampa. And while he was returning to the Bucs, she was leaving the, quote, compound of Tampa, the Brady family compound, and headed to her compound in Costa Rica. There really hasn't been much more to the story since it broke yesterday. But what are your thoughts on this, Fitzy? Will this elongate Tom Brady's career? Could it shorten his career? Is he screwing Bucs fans? Is his mind not in the Bay Area down there? What exactly is going on with Thomas Edward?
I think the last thing that's on Tom Brady's mind right now is how Bucs fans react to news of his potential marital turmoil and domestic strife. I think he could not give
mind. What's on yours?
You asked what's on his mind. What do I think could work out for him? I'm just letting you know. I don't think he gives a flying shit about what's going on with Bucs fans or even this season.
What happens? Does this elongate
what happens now
or shorten it?
I think it shortens it. Now I know we were speculating yesterday. You rampantly, of course, like agreeing with Tom, just being a complete misogynist, just shamefully so. It was awful. I saw people standing outside of our Fenway studios yesterday with pitchforks and signs. There was a whole protest. They even organized a rally and a march today. But of course, like the coward you are, you decided to broadcast from home today so as to avoid having to pay the toll. So it's okay. These are your decisions, your emotions. You're the one alongside your family who I pray for every day, who has to live with them. I think this shortens Tom Brady's career. You and Lou thought maybe it could elongate it because if he separates from her, then now he can be with the one true love he has outside of his children, which is football, because that's ultimately what he's married to. I think this signals, okay, we're having some issues here. We're having a little trouble. This is going to be his last season because he's gonna go gently into that good $1/3 billion deal that he's got with Fox. Starting next year to call games with Kevin Burkhardt, unless it goes through and then he comes back and plays here. I'm kind of like, it was fun to talk about, but like I'm kind of with a listener viewer right now, Kenny Tasney. I'm starting to get into like ultimate Brady fatigue / don't know if I have the bandwidth to give a crap anymore.
But no one else is. I would answer Kenny. FYI, Kenny, if you post a story or you talk about Tom Brady on any audible medium, the phone lines light up and fans eat it up. So everybody can say they don't care about Brady, even though he did play here for 2 decades, and he is going to be the greatest football player that ever walks through New England, Foxborough, maybe the greatest athlete to ever walk through Boston. Yes, I know Bill Russell, Ted Williams. There's a great debate. We're a lucky city.
I'm sorry
Tom
that
Brady
you. I'm
is
sorry.
a story forever.
I'm sorry you feel that way about Nick Folk, but that's fine.
Tom Brady is a story forever, and people very much care about it. Whether you think they should or shouldn't.
No, it's true.
It's reality.
We and the crazy thing is we actually have Far be it from us to actually be the people to tell you about metrics and data and results and clicks and page views and shares. But the stuff that gets the most metrics and clicks and page views and shares continues to be Tom Brady related, even though we all profess out loud, holy smokes, I've got such an intense case of Brady fatigue. I can't take it anymore. Truth is, we're all sort of like harboring some jealousy or some resentment or some sadness or some loss in some way, shape, or form. And we miss the guy, and we continue to pine for the good old days, because even if it gets good, if not great again, it'll never be like what it was. So it's only human nature to want to continue to chase or be at least nostalgic over how great you had it for a certain amount of time.
Plus, I don't even care about that. Like, people still care about Brady. People were rooting for Brady in Tampa, which I thought was idiotic. Like, I was not one of them. I was not rooting for him in the Super Bowl, where most of New England was rooting for him. So people still do care. And I mean, we learned the lesson yesterday. You talk Brady, the phone lines light up and everybody has an opinion. It's, what it reminds me of a little bit in terms of the fatigue is the old Tim Tebow days. A lot of people would be like, no one cares about Tebow. Talk about something else. But before I go, let me give you my opinion on Tim Tebow. Everybody has an opinion.
He can't throw a forward pass. Nobody cares. He's a gimmick. However, I want to say the following things.
Right. So I think it's interesting. And I think it's interesting because I also like to consider us an NFL podcast on some level. We'll talk about teams around the league.
The football podcast. We just happen to focus on one particular team that happens to be within our geographical striking distance and that we've watched, rooted for, or criticized our entire adult child lives.
So when the number one player, according to NFL Network in the National Football League, has a major life story going on potentially after already having a weird hiatus in the middle of training camp, something that doesn't happen, does not happen. This isn't baseball where Erod takes a hiatus in the middle of the season or any of that. You don't leave training camp. He already left training camp. And now you're telling me there's more drama that could affect his team. And oh, by the way, if it affects his team, it affects the league, the playoffs, Super Bowls, all kinds of fantasy football. So like it or not, Tom Brady's fight with his wife has trickle-down effect on the rest of the NFL, your team, your football world. It just does.
Okay, before we do our AFC and NFC, nay, NFL-wide Six Rings pod and preview prediction or prediction cast or preview I don't know what the portmanteau would be of that.
Speak English.
Okay, just hush up for a sec. Allow me. We're working it out. Before next week's big NFL-wide Six Rings preview podcast, I just want to ask you this. I gave you my teaser about Jacoby Myers being a contributing factor to the Patriots offense getting in gear this year. Andy Hart, I put you on the spot for a big market tease. What does this say to you about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season? Are you in or out on them? Is he more focused, more dedicated, more fiery than ever, or could this be trouble in paradise?
I'm out. Right now, feel jinxed. They feel jinxed to me. Between the offensive line injuries, between Brady in and out, Brady's focus, Brady's emotions. Plus, he's 45, so at some point he's due to, actually age a little bit and be not quite as good, not be the most dominant player. I just feel it feels like the wheels are going to fall off the Bucs. They sold their soul, they got their title, and the wheels are falling off, which is weird because they ride a boat, not a car, so I don't know why there'd be wheels, but the wheels are off.
And it was the greatness of Brady that actually got them back into that game that they were losing 28-3 or 28-7 last year against the Rams in the playoffs, only to then make that atrocious defensive call to sell out for the blitz and leave Winfield on Cooper Kupp downfield. Good young safety, not against the receiver who had one of the best seasons in NFL history last year. That call was akin to, like, the worst defensive call in my mind in history is the one. Scheim and I discussed this last week when you were doing the radio programs, and we had to carry Six Rings one time. How Julian Edelman told that story on his new podcast about Randy Moss used to bust the balls of defensive coordinator Dean Pease over calling the zero blitz at the end of Super Bowl 42, leaving poor little injured Ellis Hobbs on giant Plaxico bursts in the end zone. And we all know how that ended. So Moss used to always come to practice for the next 3 years until he was sent packing out of Foxborough, busting Dean Pease's balls over that call, saying like, oh, is this the defense you're going to call? Better be better than that, zero blitz shit you called at the end of Super Bowl 42. That call to leave Winfield isolated on Kupp, almost as bad Like Brady has bled, literally. Brady has fought tooth and nail and clawed you back into this game against the Rams when they were down, out, just once again showing his all-time greatness. I thought it would have been a perfect way for him to wrap up his career. Like, look what I did. One more time. I came back from death's doorstep and brought my team back into a game. And instead, now all of this. I agree with you. I think coming back now has kind of like screwed a lot of things up. I still think Tampa Bay wins the NFC South by default because the Panthers will be better than people expect. I don't know about the offense on the Saints. I know they should have a good defense. And the Falcons will be a fun 5-12 watch because they'll be able to move the ball. They just can't stop anybody.
Oh, 5-12s can be fun. Speaking of previewing next week's preview.
There he is. There he is. Now you're back on brand. All right, Andy, we gotta get ready for our radio show. So let's wrap this puppy up.
Oh, I thought you were the host. You wrap it up.
Oh, fine. I thought, well, maybe you had a last little something to. Okay, you're the worst. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning into this impromptu Labor Day edition of the Six Rings and Football Things podcast. We got to go do some radio. If you get a chance, give us a follow at Six Rings Pod. Questions, comments, concerns, and more. sixringspod@gmail.com. Next week, we're going to do a Pats preview. We'll do our Patriots preview edition of the Six Rings podcast, the NFL preview. And then, of course, we'll do our week 1 Patriots at Dolphins going down to Miami preview. We'll have a Miami Dolphins beat writer on the program. It's going to be a great time. 3 huge pods next week. Lots of radio. And get ready. Set your dials. Sunday, September 11th, right after the finale, the finish, the closure of the Patriots' shocking win over the Miami Dolphins. Make sure you tune in to 93.7 FM WEEI as Andy Hart and I take over the Patriots postgame show. It'll be the debut of the Six Rings postgame show on WEEI FM all across the WEEI radio network, WEEI.com, and, of course, the Odyssey app. So please tell your friends, tune in, have an awesome weekend, let Mac cook, eat up, drink up, God bless, and as always, go Pats.
Yeah.
Bye.